Today on Locked On Red Wings, is Elmer Soderblom's roster spot all but locked up?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. Scotty's host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a sports writer for C&G newspapers, while I am a color commentator for Oakland University ACHA D1 men's hockey. Scotty, I think something that's very impressive here is that I have yet to mess up the intro with your new role. When I got laid off from Odyssey, I screwed that up for 3 weeks, but I've been very careful to make sure I get that right.
That's good. How are we going to take like an over-under on how many days until?
It'll be tomorrow. It'll be tomorrow. I'm going to mess it up.
Well, if you just get through tomorrow, then you got a weekend. That there's free days right there. Like you just got to get through tomorrow, I think.
We're crushing it. All right. Today's episode, there's been a lot of roster moves with the Detroit Red Wings, right, Scotty? Recently, a lot of injuries that have taken place, which have caused a lot of recalls to have been made. Dominik Shine actually just reassigned to Grand Rapids on Wednesday around 4:30-ish. So we'll talk about all that, kind of each individual players who have been sent up or placed on IR, like their role with the team as this hot streak. Players are solidifying their spots. They're taking hold of these opportunities, and they're not looking back. We'll lead off with Soderblom, but before we get to that, Scotty, I want to let the people know today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Scotty, Elmer Soderblom with the Detroit Red Wings has been just a delight to watch. A guy, and we've talked about it, right? A guy who was a healthy scratch regularly last year in Grand Rapids, who I, coming into the season, was convinced was probably going to have his ELC run out and then may just go back to Europe, has since then worked his way back to the NHL lineup in an everyday role. And his opportunity was obviously given to him, right, because injuries occurred. But at the same time, he's one of those guys I just hinted at that has taken this opportunity and has run away with it. He's got 5 points in 8 games, and it's a 5-point heater, 5 straight games with a point. So the question becomes, is Elmer Soderblom's spot on this roster all but locked up at this point? Even when injuries are over and people get healthy, is he here to stay?
Yes. Thanks for making us your first listen. Appreciate you all.
We have other plays to talk about. Hold on.
Yeah, good show. No, but I think the reason I do that is because it's almost humorous how much of a slam dunk I think that question is at this point. You know what I mean? I mean, this is a guy who I am completely with you, and I know we've talked about it a lot. I'm not trying to retread too much, but this is literally a dude that was completely out of sight, out of mind. He was a story that at the beginning of last season was okay, let's see, maybe he can make a push again, because he had his cup of coffee and he never did. And he was getting healthy at one point last season in the AHL. He was getting healthy scratch. And we were okay, it was a fun story, big forward, made the team out of camp. What was that, 2 seasons ago now, because of some injuries. Showed some flashes, but is never just going to be able to put it all together. And that's okay. He's a 6th round pick. That's all right. And now it is a complete 180 in 2 weeks time. I'm not sure I've ever changed my mind on a player faster than what Elmer has done to my brain over the last, 10 to 14 days. Legitimately, this is now, he should not only have a spot on this roster, he should be solidified on that third line for the foreseeable future and can play at his peak in pretty much every situation, right? At his best, you want him out there in the defensive zone because he's long, and you want him out there on the PK for the same reason, but he also can be a net front on the power play. And obviously you want him out there on the 5-on-5 for all of those reasons. So I mean, really, I think the biggest difference is he's just using the body way more than he did earlier. He's not getting knocked off the puck. He's not, some really tall people have difficulty maintaining balance, right? The center of gravity is much different. Right. It's much easier to knock somebody off their, in this instance, their skates when you're that big. And it just seems like it is a night and day difference from what we saw from him in the NHL, 2 seasons ago when he had his first stint. So a little winded there, kind of rambly, but like he is just awesome. And I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's mind that he is going to be on this roster for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I can't see a reason why he wouldn't be, right? It's, when we saw him 2 years ago and he made the camp roster out of camp, we saw what made him what we called at the time a unicorn, right? 6'8" with really soft hands. I mean, that is a recipe for a really effective player because of the reach and because of the ability to pull the puck in tight and release it really fast because of, again, how good his hands were. But as you mentioned, it was the height that was the concern, and it was his biggest strength and his biggest weakness. That center of gravity was so high, he was very easy to knock off the puck, but plus, he wanted to be a finesse-style player, so he didn't effectively use his size to win puck battles, to forecheck, to hit, and that was something that, and credit Dan Watson, too, for the development of Elmer Soderblom, that they clearly hammered home, is the consistency off the puck that they wanted him to get good at. If you forecheck hard with your length, you'll force turnovers and easily be able to intercept the puck, which he's done several times. He's now like you said, using the body. He laid a huge hit on Brandon Montour against the Seattle Kraken just on, Tuesday. So he's a guy who's now using every facet of his ability, and he's still not the strongest guy on the puck, and I think that'll probably be somewhat of a weakness throughout his career. I don't know about his overall speed, right? Like, I don't think his speed, I think speed is going to be something he struggles with, again, because he's so big. Those tall guys lose speed very fast. But again, because of that stride length and the overall reach, I think he can compensate for any lack of speed. And right now, he's so young, he's playing so hard, he's earned his minutes. And as you said, like, him being a unicorn and an effective unicorn at that makes him such a valuable asset to put out there on a night in and night out basis. And I don't think he's going to necessarily, I think what we're seeing now is Elmer Soderblom. I know it's only been 8 games, but he has 5 points in 8 games. In the 21 games he played with the Detroit Red Wings back in 22-23, he only had 8 points all season. He's already 3 points shy of that and was 16 less games. Incredible stuff by Elmer Soderblom. And, you look at the other guys who are healthy scratched, right? Tyler Mott, hard forechecking guy who specializes in the PK. Christian Fischer, a guy who can play center at times if you need him, but another PK specialist type guy. Doesn't necessarily have a consistent role in the PK, but he's there. Both of those guys feel like, and I don't mean this as an insult, but they're kind of just plug-and-play guys, filler pieces in the bottom 6. They don't really effectively help your depth scoring at all. They are dogs, as we put it. We affectionately call them dogs. They work hard, and we love that from them. But Elmer Soderblom adds an element of size and finesse to the bottom 6, an element of depth scoring that it desperately needs, and you've seen it on this new look third line. So, they just sent Dominik Shine down, who I'm sure we'll talk about next, right? But as it stands right now, there's 22 people on the roster. You can go up to 23, and there's 2 guys on IR. When those 2 guys come off IR, I don't think it's Elmer Soderblom who's getting sent down to Grand Rapids. I think I know who the name is going to be, a name that I literally forgot was on the roster because he hasn't played since he got called up. I think that'd be William Lagesson. I think William Lagesson, when Petry's healthy, is the guy who's going to get sent down. Yeah, did you remember? Yeah, he's on the roster right now.
Yeah.
I think Elmer Soderblom's earned his shot to stay with the Wings, and obviously he's going to have to continue to earn it. It's not just one and done. But if he continues to play at this level, there is no feasible reality where you can justify sending him down.
Yeah, well, yes, especially again when looking at like Dominik Shine got sent down on Wednesday, Lagesson will almost certainly be next. Like when you look at the other available options, I think it makes the picture even clearer. This is a guy who, again, not only has played better than expected, but he has been a legitimate force and a legitimate difference maker on the ice night in and night out. And I think that you, obviously, if it doesn't go without saying, have to keep players like that around.
100%. Scotty, let's do a quick break. When we return, well, let's talk about Dominik Shine a little bit because he got sent down, and a lot of fans are upset about that, and I think they have a right to be, in the sense that, like, I understand why they love him so much. So we'll talk about that in segment 2. Stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Looking for tickets for the next big event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sporting event, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. Here you go. Stadium Series, guys. It is the most recent example I have of using Game Time, and it is a real-life example at that. So I'm going to keep hammering that home. I used Game Time to get my tickets to the Stadium Series, and it was Game Time Picks that helped me find a great value seat, whereas the seats around me were saying that they were about $100 more than where I was at. I got a seat in the top 1% of value. And by toggling on that all-in pricing tool, of course, I was able to see the price of the ticket up front without any surprise fees at checkout, like some of the competitors may do. So I didn't get shocked. With no shell shock when it came to the price tag. I knew what I was going to pay. And so when I got to checkout, I punched in Locked On NHL as my promo code, and I got $20 off my purchase. So it helped trim a little bit of that extra fat at the bottom too. And the best part, you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund you 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. I got mine immediately. I got mine digitally immediately from Game Time through Game Time. So use Game Time, use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right, Scott. Ooh, I don't like that. Scotty. I know a lot of people call you Scott. It's on the header there, but I don't like that.
It's so funny when I first meet people. Like, so many people ask me what I prefer, and at this point, I just, like, I don't. It's almost a 50-50 split in my life, and it's not even like, oh, close and not close. Like, it literally is just, there's no correlation. It's completely random. So yeah. To each their own.
Dominik Shine got sent down to the Grand Rapids Griffins, right, Scotty? And that drew the ire of the fan base. In fact, like, I'm checking, we did a social graphic for it to be like, he got signed to Grand Rapids, and we're kind of getting ratioed. Not that we're getting ratioed, right? Like, we didn't send him down, but the comments to likes ratio is almost all the comments are like, they should have kept him up. They should have kept him up. I want to know what your thoughts are on the Dominik Shine matter.
Yeah, I mean, learning that Logison was still an option, I guess maybe fuels that fire a little bit, but I think this is a situation where, like, obviously in a perfect world, I would love Dominik Shine to be on this team for, like, the rest of the season. It's such an awesome story, and he's such a cool dude. I think that he will continue to be kind of this next in line. Like, he'll be back at some point, I would imagine. And I don't have an issue with sending him down. I don't think that there were any other, if you're only looking at forwards, I don't think there were any other clear-cut solutions to that or clear-cut answers instead of him. And so, yeah, I really don't have an issue with it. I think it was more just, the emotional attachment this fan base already has with him more than anything else, which is fine and fair. And I, fall in line with that too. But on paper, if you had to send down a forward, I mean, he was kind of always going to be the choice, unless, as you mentioned yesterday, you were going to waive somebody like Tyler Mott.
Right. And that's the point, right? Is if you're not going to send down Dominik Shine, you have to send somebody through waivers. And yeah, you could send William Logison down. I don't know if he's waiver eligible or not, but the reason why he's still here is he gives you a 7th D-man option in case another injury happens. He's already with the team. And with Jeff Petry out, like, once Jeff Petry comes back 6 to 8 weeks from now, like, then yeah, you send down Logison. But as it stands, you had 14 forwards. So you had 2 forwards sitting every single night. Dominik Shine didn't need waivers. It just is a no-brainer roster management wise to send him down. Now, and I get it, right? Like, I just said it in segment 1. We love our dogs. And Dominik Shine was a dog, and he was a fantastic story. And I do hope he gets another shot at the NHL level. But I think from a player roster management perspective, it made sense. And speaking of roster management, right? Like, does this mean JT Compher is returning, or Scotty, because they have 3 days off, is it possible this is roster management in the way that you're just doing cap accrual? Because there's one game left before the Four Nations break, and we'll talk about that soon, previewing that and whether or not we're even excited for it. 13 days of no Red Wings hockey right in the middle of their hot streak, but neither here nor there. Do you think this is like more of a roster decision in terms of accrual, or is this a sign that JT Compher come back for Tampa on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I have no clue is really the short answer. I think that that's a great point. And we've seen it a lot throughout the season already this year, earlier in the year, a ton. So it absolutely could be. I think, I really do think that Shine will get some other call up at some point this year. It's just a matter of when that happens, and it's almost certainly going to be because of injury to some extent. The Compher thing is interesting because you do have whatever it is, 2 weeks off after Saturday's game, but you also have 4 days off until Saturday. So like he could be coming back. That's a long layover. So he very well could be coming back, and it could be enough time for him. Maybe there's something to be said for let's get him out there, put him in the third or fourth line, get him a few minutes, then he gets 2 weeks off, and then he can come back after that. But I think there's also something to be said for let's just play it safe. We got one more day until we get 2 weeks off anyway. So I have no clue is really my short answer. But I think, if it goes without saying, both are obviously possibilities.
No Oracle moment from you here? It's been a while since you pulled out the Oracle.
No, I think that's more like on ice type of stuff than it is roster management, like predicting exact amount of saves in a shutout than it is, as a player coming back from injury. Like I was on the show when Bert was day to day for 4 months. Like, I don't know, that's not my powers don't reach that area clearly.
Yeah, I mean, it could go either way. We're not going to find out more until practice. I think most recently Todd McClellan had said it'd be a little bit for JT Compher. Could be Saturday, could be 2 weeks from now because they don't play another game for 2 weeks after Saturday. But either way, Dominik Shine's not here. But when Compher does return, Scotty, Michael Rasmussen has transitioned back to center for that third line. And that third line, whether it be Kane or Berggren on the wing or Tarasenko maybe in the future, that third line's producing. And Michael Rasmussen has a 50%, technically it's one face-off loss below 50%, but a 50% face-off win rate. Well, JT Compher is pretty healthily in the negative in his face-off win percentage in the season. On the season, Scotty, he is 45% at center. And so the question becomes, where does he slot in, and does he remain at center?
That is the question. And I think that there's a lot of juggling that may have to happen when he returns. Obviously, just for him in a vacuum, but then you start talking about Marco Kasper, who's been playing on the wing, and if he gets reshuffled in, like the Rasmussen and Kasper and Compher all playing different positions than they were when they were 3 healthy. Then there's a break. Kasper and Rasmussen both do really well in other roles while JT's gone, and now JT's back. What do you do? And I think at the start, and maybe that's why he'll be back Saturday, so they can maybe try some stuff and with him lineup card. I think early on, I would imagine he gets opportunity at center again. That's kind of like just where my head is at. Whether that's 2C or not, I think is probably the bigger question in my head. And I can't imagine his first game back, he's just going to be 2C again. He was barely holding on to that spot when he was healthy. So I think that is kind of the bigger question to me. It's more of just where he is in the lineup card and what then do you do with Kasper and Rasmussen? Because I think there's a real argument you keep Rasmussen at center, have Compher also play center, and then have Kasper stay on the wing, and then you move, obviously, I don't know, maybe Andrew Kopp. Well, no, I guess then you wouldn't. I don't know. Right. It's. I think you can accomplish. You can keep everything kind of gelled a little bit if you do something like that.
Yeah, I have an idea in my head that I've been.
That's terrifying.
Honest to God, dude, I'm surprised you didn't see the smoke coming out of my ears trying to think up this idea. Andrew Kopp has been like the second line center pretty consistently after Todd McClellan took over. JT Compher mostly got bumped down to the third line, but now we're seeing Michael Rasmussen in that third line build some chemistry, right? Well, that fourth line has been kind of I wouldn't call it a sore spot, right? Like it's a fourth line. But, Joe Veleno hasn't really had that much of an effective season, so much so that we've had conversations about it. I think you move JT Compher, if you're not putting him on the wing, put him on the fourth line center, and which, it would suck paying a fourth line center $5 million a year, but it is what it is. Put guys where they're most effective. Bump Compher bump Veleno to a wing, or have any combination of Veleno, Mott, Fisher on that fourth line as it stands. Because right now, I don't want to mess with that third line because outside of the top line, it's your most effective line at 5-on-5.
Fair.
So I kind of want to ride that hot streak. And hell, maybe even if you're going to move Compher to the wing, maybe try him on the wing on the third line because they're kind of shuffling between. I don't think Kane's going to be on the third line forever. I think that's kind of just until he's feeling healthy again. He'll get bumped up to the second line. When then, I'm going to put Tarasenko on that. So I think Compher's the best option is to put him as center on the fourth line right now until that third line proves that they're not capable or they've lost that touch, right? Because right now they're just playing super well. I think that's the short-term response.
For sure. I don't disagree with that. And Veleno is the person I was forgetting before. So, yeah, I don't think he has a center spot held down in certainty at all. I think he would be a pretty easy candidate to. He's played plenty of wing this year already. So, yeah, it's interesting, man. I think that there's we're searching for one answer, and I think the true answer is probably that we're going to see a few different line combos out there the first few games that Compher's back.
I was just about to say, we're coming up with all these ideas, and he's going to hit us with something we didn't expect. Because Todd McClellan's kind of like that. We're going to head to a quick break. When we return, we'll finish up. We have to talk about Jeff Petry and his role with the Red Wings if and when he comes back this season. Stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right, Jeff Petry. I called you Jeff Petry. All right, Scotty, Jeff Petry. Happened? I called you Jeff Petry because that's where we're going.
Yeah, it was rhetorical. Wow. Yes, that is me, son of Dan.
He'd probably be nicer to me than you are.
I would imagine, yeah.
Jeff Petry is obviously out to 6 to 8 weeks. We mentioned that on the podcast the other day. He had surgery. Doesn't mean he won't come back this year. But with him out, the Red Wings have, quietly figured out their top four, it seems. Albert Johansson and Simon Edvinsson are growing together. They're playing really well with good chemistry. When Petry comes back, one, do we miss Jeff Petry on the blue line? And when he comes back, is there a role for him left?
So my short answer to both of those is yes and yes. I know that everybody loves to
scapegoat,
dog on him and kind of make him the scapegoat. And he's far from a perfect player, and we complain and focus in and put his play under a microscope and complain about it just as much as the next person. But I don't want to steal your thunder here because I know that this was like a big thing that you wanted to talk about, but I don't know how you look at what the third pair has done lately, and at a minimum, at a bare minimum, even if you're the biggest Jeff Petry hater out there and you think he doesn't belong in the NHL at all, which I know neither of us are, but even if you're of that mindset, I don't know how you look at what the third pair is doing and not go, wow. Like, even if it's just for 10 minutes a night, that would, Petry healthy would probably be an upgrade over one of the two guys that we're putting at the third pair right now. Hull has been brutal the last few weeks, and he had a nice little start to the year, and we thought maybe he had turned a page. I don't think he's as bad as, Lalonde made him out to think last year when he just didn't play him for 80% of the season, but I still think a healthy Petry is probably an upgrade on the third pair over him. Gustafsson has made some strides a little bit offensively, but is still I feel like gets burned at least once or twice a game defensively. I really do think that third pair Jeff Petry, even if you don't want to touch anything in the top four, which I really, to be honest, don't. I kind of fall into that camp. I don't really want anything touched in the top two pairs, but I'd be very fine with Jeff Petry on my third pair again.
I 100% agree. I think that he is a little overly hated, and like you said, we have had our moments on this podcast where we've been highly critical of Jeff Petry, but we've talked about it. You know, he and Sherratt did not make a good pair. Edvinsson and Seider made an excellent pair, and Lalonde kept riding that, and they only had them in the defense. We can go on and on about that. That's no longer the case. They split that pair up, and both those players are looking a lot better than they did when they were together. Shocker, talking about Sherratt and Petry, that is. And Petry, for what it's worth, I want people to be aware of this. Petry and Edvinsson were a damn good pair when they were together. They only played parts of 30 games, a total of 81 minutes together. But they were the top defensive pair in expected goals percentage. That's 59, nearly 60% of expected goals when they were on the ice. And again, limited sample size, right? And they're still trying to figure out the deployment situation. That was before Petry got hurt. So I understand like there's some caveats to this. But they were the most effective pair at 5-on-5 with 59.3% expected goals. You go, okay, expected goals. Garbage stat, right? Because like it doesn't count for where the goalie's at, and you know every site has it a little bit differently. Sure, that's all true. You want to go to pure shot attempts, which is just your Corsi 4. They're still third on the team at exactly 50%, whereas Edvinsson and Johansson are 48.6, so a marginal decline. But I'm just saying this to emphasize that Petry and Edvinsson actually weren't a bad pair, but we have him under such a microscope that every single little mistake he makes is kind of amplified. And I'm not trying to defend him and how Sherratt played together. That was a bad pair. It was. But he's not so bad that he's unplayable. So when I see posts, and this is a little bit... I see it in like the comment section underneath, like he had 6 to 8 weeks, and people are like, take all the time you need. I'm like, bro, he'd still be an improvement on this blue line over Gustafsson and Hall, who you just mentioned. Gustafsson and Hall have the most sheltered deployments on this team and some of the most sheltered deployments in the NHL, period. And yet on a night, their expected goals percentage is still just 41%. That's worse of any pair on the team. They have the worst expected goals percentage of any pair on the team, despite incredibly sheltered deployments. Jeff Petry would be an upgrade on the third pair, especially because that'd be a reduced role, more favorable deployments. Like, Jeff Petry's still a serviceable defenseman in the NHL. I think he's probably going to retire after this season, yeah. But I think he'd be an upgrade on that third pair. So yes, I do think you miss Jeff Petry. He gives you an extra option, and I think a better option on the third pair, because don't forget, like, Jeff Petry's not bad in the offensive zone either.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people forget, like, yeah, he can be a turnstile sometimes on defense, but so can Justin Hall and Gustafsson. But he does have a little bit of an offensive upside still, and I do think he's better defensively than both those guys I just listed. And like, we're talking about Justin Hall mostly because Hall's a right side D, so is Jeff Petry. But,
right.
You know, Gustafsson, for what it's worth, you know, hasn't provided any offense, really, despite the fact that that's what you signed him to do, and he is brutal defensively. So, you know, I think that I wanted to mostly talk about the Petry situation because I just feel like he's a little overly hated. He gets scapegoated. And yeah, we've been critical of him at times too, but he's just not as bad as people make him out to be. He's a quality defenseman who's just past his prime, but there's still a role for him on this roster, just not in the top four.
Yeah. Yes, we don't have to make this anything more than it is. Like, at the end of the day, we're talking about a guy in his mid-30s that we want to play the third pair and not play special teams. Like, he's right. You know, we're not saying that he's a world beater or that he's, you know, this well above league average defender still. But I think it's he can, in a specific role, make the team better than what it is right now. That's all. So,
you know, I mentioned the expected goal stat for Johansson and Edvinsson, right? Like, it's just like 48%, something like that, which isn't bad, honestly, in all things considered. But their actual goals for percentage, their goals for on the ice versus their goals against, is insane. Johansson and Edvinsson's goals percentage is 73.3%. They have 11 goals for and only 4 against when they're on the ice together. That is absurd.
Heck yeah.
Edvinsson and Seider, by the way, were 60%, 15 for 10 against. They were a dominant pair. I hope one day we can reunite those two because that was an insane... For all the folly that the Lalonde era had, especially this season, You like that? I saw you
word.
mimic the word. I always look for it. Is he going to say it? Is he going to mimic it? He liked folly, folks. Edvinson and Cider were an incredible pair, and they were broken up out of necessity. I hope that at some point we can get them back together in the future, right? When we have a little bit more stable decor.
We should all want this blue line to get deeper and better so that we can reunite them.
But for the time being, Johansson, Edvinson, pretty dang good. Cider and Sherratt. Cider's always good. Sherratt has been pretty solid. He didn't really have a great game against Seattle. He's been pretty solid on the top pair. He's been handling it a lot better than he did previously, and I think the change in style that the Red Wings have undertaken has helped him a lot too. So
Agreed.
All right, Scotty. Any final thoughts?
We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. We will at least preview the game against the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's a 1:00 game on a Saturday, Scotty. And we'll have something else thrown in there as well. So stay tuned to that. Almost said, what am I doing? Same time, same place. Jeff Petry. I'm Brian Fisher with Jeff Petry. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.